Hello and welcome. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is Aerofly FS4. Yes, I've sort of tried something new this time around. I mean, I do own other sims than Microsoft Flight Simulator. I still have X-Plane and DCS, but this one has been on my wish list for quite some time, and I thought, you know what, maybe it is time I'll give it a go. There were lots of surprises in here, a lot of things that I found were actually really good, some things that are maybe not so good, so I thought I'll make a video, give you my impressions and maybe a recommendation, if you like, whether this is something you should take a look at or not. Okay, without further ado, let's get started. So the first thing we are greeted with is the UI, and I have to say I really enjoy this kind of setup. It is very straightforward and you can jump in and out of this sim very easily and very quickly. In terms of flights, you have challenges where they give you particular flights that you can do. Then you just have different kinds of flights like tutorial, schedule flights, map. Schedule flights is quite interesting. They essentially give you a list of flights you might want to do, but if that's not specific enough, you can actually go to map, and if you click on an airport, I don't know, let's see, Vienna, you can see all the flights departing right now. You can also see the arrivals if you want. So there's a Wizz Air flight going to Larnaca with an A320. Down here we have a Eurowings flight to Rome with an A319, and essentially by just clicking on this flight and fly now, you are going to fly this flight. It's all going to be loaded in for you in terms of fuel and flight plan and everything. So I really like this feature. I think it's really cool. If this is too basic for you, there is a navigation tab. So here you can create your own flight plan, your own destination, arrival, etc., etc. Unfortunately, there's no way to use a real world weather, so you just have to, adjust your conditions the way you like them. But apart from that, I really like the setups. Plugging in my controllers and setting it all up took just a few minutes. So this is actually very straightforward and very easy. In terms of graphics, if I just show you quickly, I essentially went for Ultra, so everything is on the highest, and we're going to talk about performance in a minute. Now, another thing I would like to show you are the aircraft. Now, full disclosure, I bought I think it's called the Aircraft Pack or Plane Pack, because it came as a bundle, and I would strongly recommend, if you're considering buying this sim, I would include the Plane Pack. I will explain to you in a minute why. So there is a huge variety of aircraft, and each of them comes with different liveries. I have 41 aircraft because of the plane pack, and then on top of that you have all the liveries, so probably well over 100 aircraft. And it covers everything from vintage to modern. You have fighter jets, you have propeller, GA aircraft, there we have a Dash 8, helicopters, gliders, and of course, for someone like me, the most important thing, we have 319, 320, 321, 350, 380, and Boeings we have as well, 737-5, 800, the 900, the MAX, the 747, and we have 777s and the Dreamliner. We also have Concorde. I haven't tried Concorde yet. I haven't had that much time, but I've tried most of these aircraft, and I have to say I am very positively surprised by the quality of these. So let's take a look at that next. Now, one thing that's actually really funny, and I don't think I've ever seen this before in another flight sim, is that you can get into the pushback truck and do the pushback yourself. Now the problem is that this is not a lifter, so you're connected here with this bar, and that actually makes it quite complicated, because you need to turn this, to turn that, to turn the wheel. I've tried it twice, and twice I've failed to get onto the yellow line where I wanted to be. But it's a fun little feature, and I think I'm gonna try it more often to see if I can get better at it. So yes, you can push back your own aircraft, which I think is a lot of fun. But of course, where we spend most of our time is here on the flight deck. And I have to say, the aircraft that come with the Aircraft Pack are actually, well, I was really surprised, I'm gonna be honest with you. The functionality is really, really good. There's not much this aircraft can't do. You have, you know, the climb phase, cruise phase, everything. You can fill all this in manually if you like. You can calculate your V-speeds. You have a moving map which helps you with the taxiing. Everything works pretty much like on the real aircraft. The modes are slightly different than the real aircraft, but generally speaking it works. You have things like open descent, open climb. I've noticed when you come into land, just before landing it goes into FPS mode, which is not correct, but I see what they did there because this is what happens behind the scenes. So, you know, it's not perfect. It's not, you know, it's not a Phoenix A320 or a PMDG 777. But to me, these are default aircraft. This is what comes with the sim. And I'm gonna be honest with you, if I compare this to some of the other default aircraft that we have in other simulators, then I think this is actually to a certain degree better, at least in terms of functionality. There's a lot of stuff you can do here, a lot of things you can change. If I think back at the early FS 2020 days, the first A320neo from Asobo was nowhere near this. So I have to say I'm positively surprised. I looked at the 380, 320, all those aircraft. I flew the 777. And yeah, it's everything is here. If you want to fly from A to B without any emergencies, I haven't found any way to, you know, cause an engine failure or something, then there's enough here to keep you busy. Like I said, it is not study level, but you know, not everybody needs or wants study level. If you want something in between, then actually I have to say this is quite nice. Now, buttons and all that is all very nice, and FMS is very nice, but what about the actual flight model? So we are here in Zurich. I'm on the Airbus A320. As you can see, this is one of the detailed airports included in the sim. I'm gonna talk about, you know, scenery and all that a little bit later. And we're gonna take off now, and let me talk to you a little bit about the flight model. So what about the flight model? Well, I would say it is simplified. I think that's a good way of describing it. I mean, you still have all, you know, you can fly into a stall if you want to, and there's overspeed and all that. But the aircraft are really stable and very docile, even in windy conditions. That makes them quite easy to fly. Flying an approach, I find it is a lot easier here than it is, for example, in Microsoft Flight Simulator, and most certainly easier than it is in X-Plane. But like I said before, this doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing. You know, we have different simmers, different kind of things that we expect from our flight simulator software. And I think if you are like, let's call it a casual simmer, then this might be really good for you, because the aircraft is fairly forgiving, it is docile, it's very stable, and you're not going to have much trouble even landing in windy conditions. So I don't think I would be calling it unrealistic. I think that would be taking it a bit too far. I would just call it simplified, and I think that describes it really well. So as you can probably see, generally speaking, I'm quite positive about this sim. I'm enjoying myself, but let's talk about the things that are not so great. So according to the sim developers, the entire planet is included. and that is correct, however to very varying degrees. So we are here in Switzerland. As you can see, the scenery is very nice, very detailed. I've flown past the place where I grew up, and I could recognize, you know, literally the building where my mom lives right now. So here in this area, this is super detailed, but just be aware the most detailed areas are Europe and the US, and everything else is let's say it's of varying degrees. I flew down in New Zealand and that was okay. Australia was fine. Dubai is okay, but when I flew in Africa, then I have to say the scenery was well, the texture was quite blurry, and if you're at a high altitude, that's okay, but I don't think it would be good enough, for example, to do any VFR flying. So just be aware that the world is covered, but really this sim focuses on Europe and the US and some other parts of the world in terms of, you know, really nice, beautiful graphics. So if that's your thing, you want to have realistic cities and towns underneath you, you might be a bit limited in terms of where you want to fly. But that brings me to probably the strongest point of this entire software. We're here in Frankfurt, and as I showed you, everything is cranked up to the max. You can see the aircraft landing. First of all, I really like how at every airport you have the correct aircraft, even at the correct gates with the correct liveries. So that's, you know, that's already way better than what I have in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024. Also the scenery, I mean, they say there's something like 1,500 airports that are detailed included, and if I look at them, they really are detailed. Like, they give some of the payware stuff I've seen a run for their money, and this is all included in the sim. So I have to say, you know, visually, standing here with my A380, this is great. And you would imagine that this could be a bit of an FPS hog, but this is not the case. In fact, this sim runs so smooth, even with maximum settings. It is unbelievable. I haven't really checked the maximum FPS I get, but I've capped it at 60 because I have a 60 Hz monitor, and anything else is a bit pointless, and I'm constantly at 60 regardless of what I do. It is always butter smooth. The whole sim runs so well on my PC, and you know, as you know, we've discussed this in other videos, I don't have the newest PC. Mine is 3 years old. We're talking, you know, RTX 3080, which does struggle a bit, especially with Microsoft Flight Simulator. So this is great. I mean, yes, we can argue, you know, there's no grass beside the runway and all that, and no 3D foliage here. But to be honest, I'm an airline guy. It doesn't bother me too much, and I'd rather get the extra FPS. And here, the performance is just amazing. And that brings me to the next point. Right, so I don't know how this is now gonna come across on your screen, because I am now in VR, and VR is always tricky to film because, you know, I have a widescreen and VR doesn't work like that. But the point I'm trying to make is this: I haven't had to change any of the settings. I am still with everything on Ultra. Everything is to the max, and I get to fly this F-18 here at low level in butter smooth conditions. And I cannot think of a single flight sim that I have where this is possible. I usually always have a setting for 2D and a setting for VR, but here I get, you know, the full impact of all the high settings, and everything just runs perfectly. It is so amazing to sit here in VR to get all this detail, all the trees, all the buildings, everything, and just fly at high speed through the valleys. And I don't know if you've ever tried VR, but I'm sure if you have, you understand what a huge impact this has on immersion and how the whole thing feels. And especially if you can do this at high graphics settings, it is just, yeah, I mean, I'm over the moon with this. This is exactly what I always wanted. A sim that allows me to fly airliners and fast jets in VR with max graphics settings without any kind of stutter or any kind of problem. So look, there's some VFR traffic, so better look out that I don't hit anything. And this is where, for me personally, this simulator shines and pretty much beats all the others. So I've sort of come already to a conclusion, but I want to talk a bit more about this. So let's jump out of VR and bring this video to an end. So with all that said and done, where does this leave us? Well, I'm gonna be honest with you, I had low expectations of Aerofly FS4, especially in terms of functionality, but this is the area where I was mostly positively surprised. The aircraft in the airplane pack are actually really good, they're very detailed, and they give you a lot more functionality than what I would have expected. The graphics are very good, performance is amazing, the best I've ever had in any kind of sim so far. VR flying is an absolute blast. Now, do you get study level simming? No, you don't. It is more gamified, but I would say it sits in between a game and flight simulator. I do think it earns the name flight simulator. It is not a game as such, but just be aware this is more for casual simming. But having said that, you can do full flights, you know, following flight plans and do everything you do in other sims. It's just that it's all a bit simplified. But in effect, everything you need to operate aircraft is here. So would I recommend this sim? Yes, I would, with the caveat that it is not for hardcore, you know, serious simmers that love reading manuals and going through tutorials. Apart from that, you know, if you're a casual simmer, or if once in a while you just want to enjoy flying around in beautiful scenery, I would say it is absolutely perfect for that. And with that, we have reached the end of the video. Now, I'm not sure if you want to see anything else about this sim. We haven't really covered all the functionality that is there. I will keep flying on this sim, whether or not I'm filming this or not, I will leave up to you. So if you are interested in seeing more about Aerofly FS4, just leave a comment, and then maybe we'll cover things like navigation and, you know, the flight planning, and maybe do a flight in an airliner so I can show you how detailed these aircraft really are. If not, then that's fine, we'll stick to Microsoft Flight Simulator and do what we always do. Okay, so that's it. I hope you found it interesting. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for your support, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Until then, all the best. Bye bye.